Okay, so we are so excited to have Bill Creelman. He is the founder of Spindrift. Spindrift is everywhere if you haven't seen it. It's one of the very first sparkling beverages with fresh squeezed ingredients. And Bill started the company in 2010, so he was really, really early on, above, ahead of the trend in terms of fresh foods and fresh soda. And he is a two-time entrepreneur. So I go way back with Bill. We actually worked together in the 2000s with his first company, Stirrings, which he eventually ended up selling to Diageo around 2007, 2009. And then Catherine and I both worked with Bill in the really early stages of Spindrift with CMMPR. And now he has scaled Spindrift from a small scrappy startup, which he started in 2010. And then in 2018, he's grown it into a $100 million business. So we're so excited to have him here to share his business tips with you all. So hi, Bill.
Hey, good to talk to you guys again.
Good to talk to you too. So I gave a little bit of introduction, but can you tell us in your own words just a little bit more about Spindrift and what your mission is with the company and the brand?
Of course. Um, just as you said, I mean, we entered the market in 2010, and if you recall, 10 years ago, this was when sodas were going away, and no one really quite knew what to do with, replacing sodas. It was a problem for consumers. Diet sodas were somewhat suspicious. And we entered with a very different proposition. It was sparkling water and real squeezed fruit. And it was very different. It is very different, the way it's made, the way it's processed. And while it's a very simple idea, it's turned into, my life's work, 10 years of figuring out how to do it. We started as a refrigerated brand when we were working together in the early days, and then eventually we morphed into the cans that you see today. And in doing so, we really developed an entirely new kind of way to make sparkling beverages where you start at the farm and squeeze the juice and kind of rush it around the country. So that's in as short a synopsis as I can. That's really what I've been up to.
Amazing.
Amazing. So you were really on front of this clean eating movement. I feel like everyone now is very mindful of looking at the ingredients on packages. What kind of gave you that intuition? I know you have a background coming from, growing up on a farm and eating really fresh foods. Would love to hear a little bit about how you had that intuition to jump into this business before a lot of people were doing it.
Yeah, it's funny because I think, it is not, it is in many ways returning to the way people used to eat. So I think, if we were to go back, in time, people were probably eating more real, fresh ingredients than they are. For me, I guess two things. One is I was lucky enough to spend some time in Europe twice over my life, and the way that food is consumed over there is very different. You bake a loaf of bread, and it's sort of, it ends up going bad in a day, and not lasting forever. Or you buy cheese and it's unpasteurized, and that was a real wake up for me, that that things could be made in a less processed way. And then I'd say the other part of it is also just cooking and being, thinking about starting a meal and what you would begin, if you were to make a pasta sauce, for instance, or I don't know, you would start with olive oil and garlic, and you'd probably saute it for a while and add, but these are all ingredients that you know and recognize, and you go to your closet for, you go to the market to buy. Sparkling beverages are like the total opposite of that. And when we began just our development process on it, the idea that you would find a lemon and squeeze it, or squeeze an orange, was like completely blew the minds of all of these sort of chemically minded, lab minded beverage developers. It just was like, it was almost like you were talking a different language. So it that was really the instinct for me, was more to just use ingredients that made sense, and appeal to my sensibility of food, versus just let's develop a beverage and get it out there as fast as we can.
Right. Do you feel like the past decade, just looking at the growth of your business, that has been supported by kind of the trend of people focusing more on clean foods and paying more attention to that and wanting to go to the farmer's market? Like, I feel like you kind of did this at the perfect time where people were starting to educate themselves about the.
Yeah, I don't know. I guess I hope so. I hope that more and more people are paying attention to ingredients in this way. For us, still feels like a real challenge, every day. We literally, spend most of our day describing that we're a real ingredient company, and we have color and a little bit of pulp, and the rest of the sparkling water category has flavors, and what are natural flavors, and if it says natural, it must be okay. And so, I guess, I don't know, as an entrepreneur, in trying to start something different and change people's behaviors, it always feels like it takes longer. So while I would love to think that more people are keyed into real ingredients, I think we still feel like we've got a long way to go to really demonstrate that.
That's amazing. I remember when we first started working together and Spindrift was in glass bottles and it was still produced regionally. And one of our messaging points to media was about the pulp, because it was so fresh.
Yeah.
That it was a texture, we would always have to kind of over communicate, like the pulp in Spindrift is actually fresh fruit. And so we're just such huge fans, and so admire how you've used your founding story to really grow this business, as well as really stand for something as a brand. And that's what Catherine and I really try to help teach up and coming entrepreneurs, is that those two things, really leaning into who you are and what your beliefs are and your value system, and then standing for that as a brand, can really help build your business. So
yeah, I can't imagine. I just reflecting on our conversations from way back when. It really was developing a whole other language. People knew what pulp was, of course, and knew what a lemon was or an orange, but the idea that was different and had value in sparkling beverages. So, just to give you guys some props for a minute, I think that, that all of that setup work that we did was really sort of seminal work for the brand. And I think what's interesting for us is, whenever you're finding yourself struggling to come up with language to describe your product, we called ourselves a seltzer at one point. I think we were even a water way back when, which turned out to be not a great idea. But then eventually sparkling water, whenever you're struggling for language, it usually means you're doing something different. So while it's hard work and heavy lifting in the beginning, we found that it actually is real value in the end. So difficult can be good. And communication of that difficult is hard work.
So just to wrap up, we're going to link to an incredible NPR interview that Bill did with Guy Raz for the How I Built This podcast, so you can hear the entire entrepreneurial journey of Spindrift and more about Bill. But Bill, to end, what are kind of your top 2 or 3 tips that you would, or learnings, or just even pieces of advice that you would give to either people who have recently left their full-time job to take a risk and start a startup, or people who are already kind of in it and might just be scared or just unsure of kind of what the next steps are?
Sure, I'll take a shot at it. So in no particular order, I think spending time in front of the consumer, even at our, in our 10th year, 11th year, we're launching a line of Spindrift Spiked right now. It's a very different product in entering a new category. And I am, as the founder and CEO, I am largely in my office, probably more than I'd like to be, but, making time to really get out in front of the consumer and listen. I think it sounds very simple, but oftentimes, we sort of end up relying on third-party information or other intel. And for me, there's never going to be a time that it's not important to get that information firsthand. So listening to your consumer, I would say, is number one. Number two is, I would say, is culture. So, we were talking about it a little bit earlier. I think at Stirrings, I had an appreciation for the value of the team, but I'm not sure we did a great job really harnessing that value. And at Spindrift, when we decided to go up against these huge beverage companies, we really took a very different approach and said, like, we can't beat them down the middle of the aisle. We have to kind of flank them and be smarter in different ways and get really creative. And the only way you do that is with a great team and great culture, an environment where people can contribute and learn and feel empowered. And so I think, like, as a new entrepreneur, my advice would be to really lean into the team and not be sort of the hard-headed founder, which I think is an easy trap to fall into. So those are, I guess, just a few of things I would pass along.
No, those are awesome tips. And Catherine and I think couldn't agree more with those. But yeah, is there anything that's coming up for Spindrift that you might just want to share or talk about? You just mentioned Spindrift Spiked. Can you tell us more about that, or?
Yeah, we just launched it a couple weeks ago. So this is us, 10 years in, sort of recognizing that now sparkling water, we believe, will become sort of is already the big kind of subcategory in beverage that, if you look out to 2025, it's projected to be $25 to $30 billion, and sparkling water is sort of everywhere, including spiked sparkling water or hard seltzer. And we are, as a business, going to test in Boston and Southern California, in your neck of the woods, Carla. And we're hopeful that people are looking for real ingredients and low calories in their after 5 o'clock as well. And to us, that category looks a lot and has a lot of the same characteristics that the non-alc category had, when we entered it 10 years ago. Very crowded, lots of brands, but not a lot of differentiation. So we're excited to take that one on. So look for us in those markets if you happen to be there.
No, absolutely. I will drink anything that Spindrift creates. I fully trust. So,
thank you.
Thank you so much, Bill. I'm just gonna stop recording.